All set? Call this meeting to order. If I could have Councilors Bodnar and Hoyle move the agenda. Questions? All in favor? That's carried. Any disclosures of interest with any of the three items on this evening's agenda? Seeing none, okay. So we have three public meetings tonight on three separate properties. First one is item 4.1 is the public meeting report for proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendment 242-246 West Side Road, files D09-03-24 and D14-04 24-2024-201. We'll open the public meeting for 242-246 West Side Road. If I could ask Councilors Danch and Bruno to move this to get it on the floor, and then I'll turn it over to staff. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This public meeting is a requirement of the Planning Act to address applications for amendments to the official plan and zoning bylaw. In accordance with sections 22 and 34 of the Planning Act, notice must be given at least 20 days before the public meeting is held. Notice of the public meeting was circulated on October 15th, 2024 to internal departments and agencies. Notice was also circulated via regular mail to property owners within 120 meters. Meeting details have been provided along with the council agenda on the city's website and on the current application's webpage. The applicant was also required to post the city's public notice sign on the frontage of the property. Any person wishing to receive written notice of the approval or refusal of the official plan and/or zoning bylaw amendment being considered at this meeting must leave their name and mailing address with the city clerk. You may leave your contact information on the sign-in sheet located at the back of council chambers. If a person or public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of the City of Port Colborne to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Port Colborne before the official plan amendment and/or zoning bylaw amendment are passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Port Colborne before the official plan amendment and/or zoning bylaw amendment is passed, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. The purpose of this meeting is to consider official plan and zoning bylaw amendment applications submitted by the applicant, Cortec Group, on behalf of the owners Luigi Lofaso and Tierdad Garachiorlo. Sorry, I told myself I'd ask the pronunciation before the meeting, and I did not, so my apologies. For the lands known as 242 and 246 West Side Road, legally known as lots 36 to 40 on Plan 826 in the City of Port Colborne within the regional municipality of Niagara. The application for official plan amendment proposes to facilitate the development of a 112-unit apartment building with parking on the main floor. The amendment also proposes to permit a density of not more than 198 units per hectare. The application for zoning bylaw amendment proposes to change the zoning of the subject lands from the existing first density residential zone and the third density residential zone to a new site-specific fourth density residential zone. The procedure to be followed this evening will be staff's presentation of Development and Government Relations Department Report 2024-201, followed by the applicant providing their presentation. Council will then have the opportunity to request clarification and ask questions of both parties. The public will then be provided with the opportunity to provide comments. At this time, I would like to present Development and Government Relations Department Report, Public Hearing Report 2024-201, including the presentation, please. Thank you. Next slide. The subject lands are located at the southwest corner of the intersection of West Side Road and the future Franklin Avenue. The lands are legally known as lots 36 to 40 on Plan 826 in the City of Port Colborne, Regional Municipality of Niagara, and are municipally known as 242 and 246 West Side Road. The lands measure approximately 44.5 meters in frontage along West Side Road and 0.57 hectares in area. Next slide, please. The subject lands are designated urban residential in the City of Port Colborne official plan. Land uses in the urban residential designation permit residential uses, neighborhood commercial uses, cemeteries, parks, schools, community facilities, and institutional uses normally located in residential areas. Slide, please. The official plan amendment application proposes to amend the official plan to facilitate the development of a 112-unit apartment building with site-specific policies to permit a density of not more than 198 units per hectare and parking on the main floor. Next slide, please. The subject lands currently have two different zones established. The back portion of 242 West Side Road is zoned third density residential, while 246 West Side Road and the front portion of 242 West Side Road are zoned first density residential. Next slide, please. The application for zoning bylaw amendment proposes to rezone the subject lands from R1 and R3 to a new site-specific fourth density residential zone to permit the proposed apartment building. The site-specific zone proposed by the application is requesting an increase in the height and reductions to the lot area per unit, corner, side, and rear yard setbacks, parking space and size requirements, and landscape buffer requirements. The public comments that were received by noon today were included in the addendum package that was published earlier today. As of the date of this meeting, staff have received the following from commenting agencies and departments. The fire department has no concerns at this time. Enbridge has no objections to the proposed application, but Enbridge reserves the right to amend or remove development conditions. The Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation have no objections to the applications. The Niagara region, after receiving the notice of public meeting, noted that the planning justification report submitted for these applications stated that an environmental noise feasibility study and a detailed noise control study were submitted under a separate cover, but not included in these submission materials. City planning staff also noted the same was true of the shadow study report prepared by Cortec. When mentioned to the applicant, it was noted that a detailed noise control study prepared by S.S. Wilson Associates was submitted for 250 West Side Road, which will be across the street from 242 West Side Road once Franklin Avenue is built out. Similarly, the environmental noise feasibility study prepared by Valcoustics Canada Limited was submitted for the Northland Estate subdivision, which is about 700 meters north of the subject lands. As of this public meeting, these three studies have not yet been submitted. Formalized, fulsome comments from the Niagara region, Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, and internal city staff are forthcoming and will be included in the future recommendation report. Thank you for your time, Your Worship. Are there any questions of clarification from Council at this time?
Councilors, anything to staff? Great, no, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, Your Worship, I would like to pass the floor to the applicant for a brief presentation.
Mr. Rivers, welcome.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, always nice to that's maybe why I didn't hear the young lady say, or hear anything she said.
and the fact that I'm getting old. For the record, my name is Stephen Rivers. I'm a member of the Canadian Institute of Planners and a registered professional planner. I'm the owner of South Coast Consulting, and I live at 189 Clare Avenue here in Port Colborne. Next slide, please. This slide's similar to the one that your planner showed you, showing the location of the proposed development, the existing 2 lots, and the existing residential development on those, the wooded area, and the proposed Franklin Avenue, West Side Road, Coronation Drive, and the unopened Pinewood Street road allowance. Next slide. So what the proposal is, the rendering, hopefully will look like. Of course, as things develop and change, those, the building may change as well, but that is the current intention of the owner and the designer. Next slide, please. The existing parcel is 0.57 hectares, a little over an acre. Has 23 meters of frontage on highway. 23 meters of frontage on both Highway 58 West Side Road and the unopened road allowance on Franklin. The official plan designation in the regional official plan is built-up area, and the official plan designation in the Port Colborne official plan is urban residential with the zoning of R3. Next slide. Again, this is a concept site plan, proposed site plan, showing how the property will develop on the 2 lots after the demolition of the 2 existing houses, and the proposed opening of Franklin Avenue to the north. Next slide, please. This is a drawing of the ground floor of the property, showing the parking underneath the building, roughly how it will look in addition to the parking that's being proposed on the rest of the site. Next slide. And this, again, a layout of the potential residential units on the floors above. Each floor would be essentially the same layout of units. Next slide. The surrounding uses in the property, to the north, there is existing undeveloped residential lands. To the south and east, low-density residential with the park and the school further south, the retail plaza across Highway 58, and as I'm sure council and the people in the audience are aware, there's recently been approved a stacked townhouse development south of the retail plaza on Coronation Drive. Next slide. We want to do something perhaps unusual in land use planning, certainly in my experience in Niagara and much of the rest of Canada. We went ahead and contacted the neighbors ahead of bringing forward the details of the proposal and preparation of my planning justification report. So the neighbors' issues, as I'm aware of them, based on the comments that I received back, are, next slide, please. Just to show what we did, this is a copy of the first page of the letter that we sent out to everybody within 120 meters, saying this is what we're proposing to do. If you have any concerns or issues, please get in touch with us, and we'll see what we'll try to address them. If we can't address them adequately, we may end up changing the layout of the proposal. And the next slide is, oops, I missed a page. Okay. Anyway, the next slide was the sketch, the drawing that you've seen already. A number of the residents did respond and have had communication both verbally and online with those who responded, provided them where I could with information about what was being proposed, and several of them I sent the draft preliminary planning justification report so that they were fully aware of what was going on, or as aware as we could make them. Next slide. So the neighbors' issues were not in keeping with the residential character of the neighborhood. Shadowing, reflective surfaces, lighting and photometrics, parking, municipal infrastructure, and property value. Next slide, please. In terms of the proposal not being in keeping with the character of the residential neighborhood, much of the land around the subject property is already vacant, or is vacant, or is developed for residential uses or commercial uses. It's all designated for residential or commercial development in the official plan, and zoning permits different densities and types of residential and commercial development. Next slide, please. Again, an example slide showing the types of uses that surround the subject property. Next slide. Shadowing. The shadow study report is in Annex 4 of my planning justification report, which is appended to the material you've received. The properties to the east are buffered by the 3.6 meter setback within the property and the 20 meter unopened Parkwood Avenue road allowance. The two affected residential lots to the east on Woodside Drive are deep lots with the dwellings positioned outside the impacted area of the shadowing, resulting in year-round, and particularly summer access to sunlight. Next slide. Reflective surfaces. The facades on the east side and west side of the proposed building would be no more reflective than any other residential building, and we can certainly work with staff if that is a significant issue during the preparation of site plan control application and plan of condominium application to where, if possible, address that issue. Next slide. Lighting and photometrics. A photometric plan is required as part of the project's site plan control approval. That plan will, I'm sure, meet the standards of the city so that light is not going outside or not focused outside the boundaries of the property any more so than it would be any other residential commercial use in the city. Next slide, please. Parking. There are 116 parking spaces proposed for the 112 apartment units, providing parking at over 1 space per unit, whereas the rate of 1.25 spaces per unit is what's required. We feel that ratio of parking being provided to the residential units is adequate because there's access to public transportation, traditional bus transit in the Niagara region, and RT on demand are available. There's bicycle parking. Bicycle parking spaces provided for the residents, and some residents certainly may choose to use that. I use my bicycle as often as I can. Given the site constraints, providing fewer parking spaces allows for the creation of more affordable housing. Parking spaces cost money. There's certainly an issue throughout Ontario with affordable housing, and by enabling the fewer parking spaces, it has the potential to make the housing more affordable. Next slide. Municipal infrastructure. Functional servicing report in Annex 5 determined that the water supply for fire protection is anticipated to be adequate, and there will be no impediments to sanitary sewer servicing. Next slide. Property value is not a land use planning issue, and I'm certainly not able to or willing to discuss it. Next slide. Archaeological assessment. An archaeological assessment was prepared, and no archaeological assessment of the study area is recommended. I'm sorry, an archaeological assessment has not been prepared, but no, sorry, let me rephrase that. An archaeological assessment has been prepared, and it determined that no additional archaeological assessment in the study area is recommended. Next slide. Noise impact study. There have been a number of noise impact studies on this part of Highway 58. The Northland Estates study, environmental noise feasibility study, the Coronation Drive noise feasibility study for the proposed residential development, and the Franklin Road Apartments detailed noise control study. The region is still demanding one more noise study, which is ongoing right now. We've contracted a firm to do that. It will be provided in due course. It can be made a condition of site plan control. 4 noise studies for this piece of Highway 58 is, in my professional opinion, onerous. We assume that the noise impacts and mitigation measures from the Franklin Road Apartments detailed noise control study has equal application to the proposed development. They're 20 meters apart. The noise feasibility study for the project will be provided at the site plan control approval application stage as part of this project. Next slide, please. Affordable housing. The table shows the unit type breakdown, the number of bedrooms and floor area. The proposed price, purchase price proposed for the B1 suites is $370,000. Based on the Government of Canada mortgage qualifier, the tool, the 28 suites are affordable for the 6th percentile individuals with the gross annual household income of more than $80,000. That's affordable by the provincial and regional standards. Next slide, please. Advantage of the proposal. The proposal is consistent with the provincial, regional, and city policies encouraging infilling and intensification. It's efficient use of infrastructure. Will be increased city tax base resiliency. And the development constitutes, in my opinion, good planning. Next slide, please. The planning considerations. Planning reviews have been undertaken or will be undertaken by South Coast Consulting and the city planning staff based on the requirements of the Planning Act. The provincial policy statement, we actually at the time looked at the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, which no longer exists. The Niagara Region Official Plan, the City of Port Colborne Official Plan, and the City of Port Colborne Zoning Bylaw. All those documents have been reviewed for this application. Next slide, please. I'm willing to answer, hopefully, be able to answer questions.
Great, thank you, Mr. Rivers. Council, any questions to the applicant? Councilor Bruno?
Thank you, Worship, through you to the applicant. Appreciate the fact that you did a pre-consultation not required under the Planning Act with the neighbors. It's my understanding there were a couple of folks that submitted questions and questions more than once that weren't answered. Was that your understanding, or?
No, I think anytime anybody asked me a question, I responded either by email or by providing them the draft planning justification report. If I missed someone, I'm certainly it could have happened, but I did my best to reply. And as I said, we sent out a letter to every property owner within 120 meters of the property. None of them were returned. That's above and beyond. I'm willing to say 99% of the planning and development firms or developers in Ontario.
Councilor?
If I could, I mean, you don't have to answer this because it's really not part of the application, but I'm happy to see if this is correct. that the adjacent property is now owned by the same developer.
I'm sorry, could you speak
The
up?
adjacent property that has an apartment or condo recently passed in the last couple of years is under the same ownership?
I don't know if it's in the same ownership or not. I tried extensively to get information about that project from the city, and they weren't able to provide it.
Well, I mean, I guess I'm saying that if it was your client that I had heard that bought the neighboring property, so I don't know whether asking the city would have done it, but if he hasn't, that's
Through the
fine.
mayor to the council, my client's here. I can ask him if he owns the property on the north side of Franklin Avenue. You do? They do.
Okay, the reason I asked that question is because I like the fact that you did it and it all can be under one control. That property was passed here not too long ago. It has a much different parking and height profile than this development before us tonight. And I only can assume that the purchasing of that made good business sense. And, or the developer plans to amend that one. I would like to think that it made good business sense, and it would seem to me that a compatible version next door would complement it and make a lot of sense, particularly on the parking and height. And so I'm sure you did your own business analysis as to the next door property. But, I often get developers here who will say, this is the only way we can make this project work. We need this kind of parking density. We need this kind of height to make these projects work today. Yet we have a project next door that hasn't started, that was approved in the last couple of years, that you gentlemen bought. And so I guess it's a comment and a question, Mr. Rivers, and perhaps your clients may want to address that, why they wouldn't consider like-minded area with like-minded properties and work to reduce the height and the parking density. That's my question.
I'm not able to answer that question. I have limited, if any, professional knowledge of the property on the north side of Franklin Avenue. I have no idea what his parking proposal is. I've seen the noise study from it, but I haven't seen any of the other background information that goes along with it. Again, as I said, I tried to get that information from the city, but it was not made available.
Counselor?
And to be nonpartisan and fair on both sides, I do agree with your comment on the noise study being done next door.
Thank you.
It hasn't done that. So you may not be able to answer that. If your client wants to answer that, that's fine. Otherwise, we'll leave it with the recording secretary to be a question to answer. It'd be great with all these folks here tonight and those watching if they could, but that's your call.
Certainly, through the mayor to the councillor, I anticipate providing a supplementary planning justification report, and if I can, I will answer that in that report which will come to council.
Okay. Further questions? Seeing none? Oh, sorry, Councillor Aquilina?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Mr. Rivers. With this proposal and potential another development happening on Franklin, and then the one Coronation Street, was there any discussion with the MTO about like lights in terms of traffic lights?
Certainly hasn't been yet in the work that I have done on this particular project. I haven't seen anything in the traffic studies that I reviewed for Coronation Street, Coronation, and Northlands that suggested there were no recommendations for new traffic lights that came out of any of the, I think again,
Yeah,
4 traffic studies that were prepared.
yes. That's
Certainly,
nice.
it's within council's prerogative to request the MTO install those traffic lights, but having been a transportation planner in a past life, I doubt if it would be difficult to provide the warrants necessary to do that, or the warrants aren't provided to do that at this time, and MTO would be reticent to put a traffic signal on their highway unless those warrants are met.
Counselor?
I'm good, thank you.
All set?
Thank you.
Okay. Counselor Baggy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. I also like to thank you for contacting the residents around the area. I think every developer should do that, and I've been pushing for it, but we gotta change the rules to grow that, but it does make good,
A good developer will.
good developer will. Yeah. When is the proposed start of construction? Like, this council has approved many construction projects, and they say they're gonna start within a year, and they're still sitting there after 2, 3, 4 years. I don't know whether it's because they wanna flip the property, or interest rates aren't proper to their liking right now, or, so is there a planned construction start when approved?
Through the mayor to the councilor, I'm not aware of a construction start date. I know from dealing with some of my other clients that the market is softening. Sort of, they're not forging ahead as they once did. Again, I'm not aware of a construction start date. If, again, in my supplementary report, if I become aware of it, I will certainly include that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Counselor Bruno?
Yes, I just wanted to get it on the record because I'd received a email about this. Mr. Rivers, with respect to the rear yard parking area, there was a concern about, there's a bush line in behind there, I'm sure you recognize. It's wet in the spring, and the thought of an impervious surface, I'm sure you'll try and deal with that in site plan and catch basin and pipe drainage, but I just wanted to ensure that gets recorded as a question through our planning department, and if you want to take a stab at that now, as well as that bush lot behind Woodside has birds, squirrels, other wildlife in there, and I don't know if you wanted to address any of that, or we'll have it addressed through the minutes in the planning results later.
Through the mayor to the councilor, 2 very good questions. Certainly the stormwater management plan and grading plan that will be required as part of site plan control. We'll look at the pre and post stormwater on the property. The post development stormwater drainage on the property must not be greater than what's going on now, and it's certainly in the interest of the developer to direct it to any existing storm sewers or store it on site until it evaporates. With regard to the bush lot, I actually walked the site with an ecologist, which is a rare thing for me to get out and get my boots dirty. And the biggest surprise was that there's not much of the bush lot left anymore after the city took it out. The unopened road allowance to the east of the property between the existing residential and this development, it was tree covered. Sometime in the last year, the city clear cut that road allowance. So, yeah, there's birds there and there's wildlife there, but the impression of the ecologist was it wasn't any kind of significant natural heritage left after the city's work.
All set? Further questions to the presenter? Thanks, Mr. Rivers.
Thank you. I assume I'd be able to rebut any public statements as well.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Okay, so we do have some delegations this evening that had pre-registered. We have two, one, Mr. Gavrilik will be up first, but he's here. We have one virtual, and then we had one written delegation, and then I'll go to the floor. So, Mr. Gavrilik, if you want to come up, please state your name, your address, and just to remind everybody, you have 10 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Gary Gavrilik. I live at 21 Woodside Drive, lots 26 and 27. What I'm going to read now is a response to the letter that Mr. Rivers and his client sent out, and I amended it today. Mr. Rivers, thank you and your client, the developer, for asking for comments from those of us who may be directly impacted by this development. More developers should follow suit. However, I must admit that my wife and I were shocked when we opened the letter and reviewed its contents. The house we live in at 21 Woodside Drive is my childhood home. My parents built this home in 1962, and it was the first build as part of the Woodside Avenue subdivision under that time Humberstone Township. My wife and I purchased the home in 1983. That's lots 26 and 27. We have always anticipated that someday the adjacent lands would be developed, but to what extent, as all properties were originally zoned R1. During the selling process of the property in question, the acting real estate agent marketed the property as investment opportunity, referencing the purchaser could apply to rezone for townhouse development. That is what we expected the use of the property was to be. There was an understanding that prior discussions related to getting the zoning approval for townhouses on the site would be a requirement, with the understanding that property could not be accessed from West Side Road. I hope that you and your client will understand that we are not happy with this, but without sounding NIMBY, not in my backyard, we hope that there is an understanding of what the impact could be to our way of life and to that of all our adjacent neighboring properties. We hope that there is room for negotiation and that all comments are seriously considered. We wish to make the following comments based on the information that was provided in our letter. Do you have any examples of the projects that your client has completed so that we can reference them for comparison? I had no reply from Mr. Rivers at that time. What is your client's level of experience as a developer? Any references? There was no reply from Mr. Rivers. Could you please provide the developer's name? I don't believe it was included at that time, but there was still no reply from Mr. Rivers. We feel that asking for a bylaw amendment to accommodate an 8-story, 112-dwelling condominium is somewhat aggressive. I'm sure that by now that you have heard from others that it is not in keeping with the residential character of the neighborhood. The ask for an 8-story building might possibly be an attempt to test the waters with an anticipated outcome of an approval of 5-story development, as there already is in a 5-story approval for the property at the north side of Franklin Avenue road allowance. Any building 5, 6, 7, or 8 with more floors would be a concern for seasonal shadowing, having a negative impact on adjacent properties. In our case, we would be impacted but mid to late afternoon as the sun sets in the west. Seasonal shadowing could also have a negative impact of the west side during the winter months, creating black ice under certain conditions, most likely in the early mornings as the sun rises, creating a shadow from the building. The provided rendition of the proposed development is impressive, but depicts what we believe are very reflective surfaces on all 4 sides. According to the layout you provided, the building is positioned with the residential balconies facing north and south, with the end exposure to the building facing east and west. These exposures facing east and west present a reflective issue for us, as our backyards face the west. Conversely, those living on the west of the building would have the same concerns. The layout drawing shows entry and exit to the development from Franklin Avenue. This would mean the developer would be responsible for the full development of Franklin through Woodside Drive. A controlled intersection, traffic lights, West Side Road and Franklin Avenue would be a Ministry of Transportation requirement. Building lighting and parking lot lighting would also be a negative impact on adjacent properties. Regarding the provided layout, due to its size, we are not able to determine the front and rear setbacks. Weren't able to recognize the scale. The layout reveals that the proposal does not meet the 1.25 parking spots per unit requirement. The layout does not reveal designated handicap parking, visitor overflow parking availability. I'll just skip that. I'll just go into my summaries here. On July 25th, a second request was made for examples of references of Bensani developments, completed projects. Mr. Rivers could not provide any, but however, he did provide us with the justification report. 8-story, 112-unit condominium is not in keeping with the residential character of the neighborhood. A 5-story development would be a better fit in that there is a previously approved 5-story development at the north side of Franklin Avenue. Concerns with the 1.25 parking spaces for the development's occupants. The average trend is 2 vehicles per household. Where will the overflow from this development go, including visitor parking? Potential traffic concerns for Franklin Avenue, on-street parking, truck traffic, and speeding. Franklin Avenue has the potential of becoming the preferred and quickest route to West Side Road. Please explain the sign on West Side Road. Franklin Avenue condos, phase 1 coming soon. How many phases are there? We hope that any construction would be of a high quality build. We hope that council members, staff fully understand our concerns and that developer Bensani Develops take our concerns seriously and with respect. Sincerely, myself and my wife. Could you just throw up the JPEG picture, please? There was a picture that I provided. Okay, thank you. Well, anyway, I intended to send a picture of our backyard facing where the proposed development would be. It's an unobstructed view, and our view would be really obstructed by having an 8-story building, and it would impact our sun in our backyards.
All set?
Any questions?
Thanks. Any questions to the speaker? Seeing none? Thank you, Gary.
I will say, though, one
Yep.
comment with respect to the controlled intersection. That was a requirement of the 5-story approval on the north side of Franklin Avenue at that time. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Next, we have Ann Lassard. She is here virtually. Oh, you're here in person. There you are. Yeah, come on. Well, if you're going to speak, I got to have you come up to the podium. Yeah, the microphone's already on, and just state your full name and address, please.
Yes, my name is Ann Lassard. I live at 9 Woodside Drive in Port Colborne, and my property is directly behind the proposed parking lot for the apartment complex. And I had 3 concerns. A main one being that my back lot, and I'm not sure if this is what is being referred to as a bush lot, because I have cleared a lot of the bush from that area. I think of it as natural habitat for the birds and squirrels and rabbits and coyotes that come through there. So Mr. Rivers mentioned that it's largely been cleared, and I think the road allowance was cleared for the ditch to help with the drainage. But there is my woodlot and other lots adjacent to the road allowance that I know I feel is a benefit to the animals, and I'm hoping to develop it. So kind of take exception to it, to there being no appreciable wildlife there, because I do see the wildlife all the time. Yeah, that was the main point. Main points. I do have concerns that the additional paved area is going to contribute to the vernal flooding that happens every spring on my property, which is, I guess it's because it's low. I think there may be some rock foundations in the area, because my understanding is they weren't able to entirely clear the ditch, so that there could be better drainage there. So I understand you're going to assess what the current problem is, and my back lot sometimes referred to as Lake Louise in the spring, and we certainly are working to ameliorate that rather than for it to get any worse. Yeah. So I did have a question too about the structure that's going in there. That there's going to be, I guess, parking is going to take up the full first floor of the building, which I'm wondering why there isn't going to be underground parking there. And I'm wondering, is that because of concerns about rock underneath, and how does that fit into the picture? Yeah, okay, so that was my thoughts.
Just a second. Questions to the speaker? See none? Thank you very much. Mike? Yes, turn the mic on. Thanks. Our next is a written delegation is Anna Ferrara. Unless Anna Ferrara is here and wants to speak, but they did do a submission. Okay. So anybody from the floor, so put your hand up and I can call you forward. Yes, sir, come on up.
Mayor Steele, we sent a letter into your office with our concerns. Did you get it?
You want to come up, please? Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I had a whole spiel prepared, and then I listened to the presentation of Mr. Rivers. And when he said that letters were sent out, I could barely contain my disbelief. We did not get a letter.
And we live right next door to where you're building. Here we go.
And we didn't even get an opportunity to answer questions or concerns or provide concerns. So the only time that we found out about this was the sign that was posted with this big, humongous building on it. And another sign that was also posted in front of one of the proposed homes that was purchased by the developer that will eventually be torn down. I have to say that I am absolutely disgusted with this. What is a home anymore to people? We have lived at this residence for 29 years. We have a special needs daughter that knows no other home but this. We provided an environment for her to accommodate her needs, to keep her safe and secure, to make sure that she doesn't undergo humongous panic attacks and anxiety, which you have no idea how difficult it is to bring her out of. We have renovated, we have built, we have family gatherings, we have a pool in our backyard because we cannot travel, we can't take a vacation. Our daughter would not ever withstand the stress involved with packing her up and going somewhere. So our home is our life. Mr. Gaverluck brought up quite a few of the common concerns that we have. Plus, there's so many more. I mean, this humongous building is going to go right up beside our home. Right now, We can go in our backyard, enjoy the privacy, the security of our backyard, and not worry. Now we're going to have this humongous apartment building right beside us. So all the tenants are now going to look down into our backyard, watch us swimming, watch what we do every day. And what about my daughter? If she sees strange people around that she's not familiar with, she freaks out. So we have to now start all over again with accommodating an issue that should not be happening at this time in our life. So to say that we are angry is just minor. So I sent a letter in, and I'm supposing that everybody has gotten a copy of it, because I don't know why you didn't. And I've listed very clearly our concerns. And I wasn't expecting to have to read it, but if you didn't get it, I will.
It's going to take more than 10
It
minutes.
sure is.
You get 10 minutes.
We get 10 minutes. Do I get 10 minutes, Your Honor?
No, you get 10 minutes.
Let me say something.
The only thing is, just for the record, though, I need you to just state your name and address.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Paul Slipback. I live with my wife at 238 West Side Road. We're the house south of this monstrosity. I'm not against development. Not at all. Cars have improved. Everything's improved. But there is a place to build a building like this in a residential area is not the place. Number two, Mr. Steele, you said you walked behind the building and there wasn't
Steele?
too much
No.
water? Or
Rivers.
Mr. Rivers?
No, I did not.
Ever since that
Okay,
was plowed out?
all your questions come to
Okay,
council,
ever
please.
since
Yeah, not to the people
road, I forget Parkwood Avenue or,
Park?
Yeah, Parkwood.
ever since the city plowed it, we are getting water coming from there. You cannot walk back there on a heavy rainy day. The water is like this. Number three, where do they come in and go out, the vehicles, for this building? Are they coming in and out to go out to West Side Road? Or are they going to go down that road behind us?
No, it would be Franklin Avenue.
It'll be coming out Franklin to West Side Road?
Yeah, there's no plan to open Parkwood. It's an unopened road allowance.
Okay. Has that been approved yet, Mayor?
Which, what, the
To
Franklin?
come out to West Side Road?
My understanding is even prior to this development, the former development had to come out from Franklin, had to be extended to West Side Road.
But has MTO approved it? The only reason I asked, sir,
Yeah.
years ago when we had a dance studio, the MTO told us, no, one car every half hour. You're allowed 4 cars in the driveway. Now all of a sudden, because these developers are coming in, pardon the expression, ladies, we have to kiss their behind. I think it's time the city says, yes, we will allow development, but development will go to where it is going. If there's an R3 rating or zoning, leave it R3, because that is a zoned R1 residential area. Is it going to be able to handle the sewers? Is it going to be able to handle the peace and quiet that the people on Woodside Drive and we are used to? And then the traffic going out. If I come out my driveway sometimes in the morning, I have enough time to say, God save the Queen. Now you're going to have how many more cars coming out? You're going to see accidents galore, and it won't be on my hands. It'll be whoever passes this. We've lost one life on West Side Road since I've lived in this area. Do we have to lose more to prove something? Again, I'm not against development, but let's not go overboard.
Okay, so.
Thank you.
So I will add to that. We have privacy concerns that my husband's mentioned. We also have issues with the proposed parking lot lighting shining into our house through the back throughout the entire night. We have issues with people from this developed building looking into our backyard. We could probably throw a ball back and forth. That's how close it's going to be. Are the developers going to provide a berm for noise control between the properties? are the people going into this building, party goers? I mean, is there going to be any regulations? Is it just open to anybody? Do we now have to deal with that kind of noise? How about a fence for security? Because we never needed to put a fence at the back before because it was wooded. And there was no way we would have our daughter going out. She likes to sometimes take off. She couldn't do it. So it was a sanctuary and it was a safe zone for her to exist. We share the same concerns. It talks about phase 1 on the sign. How many phases are there? What are the phases? Construction concerns, machinery coming and going, dust control, debris removal, safety concerns where they're building. There is a rock bed underneath the ground that they are going to be building on. Are they going to blast? What are they going to do? How is that going to affect our foundation? We recently waterproofed our entire basement. We have extensive photos of the existing foundation. And should there be any issues, who's going to pay for the repairs? Who's going to take responsibility for what's done to our house? There's a humongous tree right beside our property. They're going to take that down. It is so close to our house. Who's going to pay for the damage if something falls onto our house, onto our pool? We haven't been given anything, any kind of explanations. I reached out to a lawyer and I got nothing. In fact, they did a survey. We had to do another survey. We paid for it out of our pocket and found out that the first survey was wrong. We had to move a fence. We incurred that expense.
It was a foot off the boundary line. This is the kind of people you're dealing with, a foot.
So we moved the fence. We paid to have it moved. There were trees that were rotted and ready to fall down on our house. We reached out to have the previous owner pay for having them taken down. They refused, so we paid for it. We removed 3 trees and brought them down. Otherwise, they would have fallen on our house. What is the developer going to do with these trees? They're our property. We paid for them. We've cared for this lot that they've purchased, and we were quite willing to acknowledge the fact that they are the new buyers. But we took care of it for 29 years. We cleared it of poison ivy, poison oak, and sumac for years. We drained the water that always accumulated in the spring. We took care of land that wasn't ours, but we did it so that we would ensure the continuity of our way of life. If this was a divorce proceeding, continuing a spouse's current way of life is covered by law. What is the difference? It's not a divorce, but you're changing our way of life. So what steps, what measures are going to be taken, and who's going to pay for it to ensure that we continue the way of life that we're accustomed to for 29 years? We don't have a backyard between us and wherever they're going to put this building. It's going to be right beside us.
Okay, 1 minute, please, to wrap up.
1 minute. I'd just like to mention one more thing, Mayor. The people who bought the house next to us didn't even have the courage, and I don't know if they're here or not, but I hope they hear me. A family from Kingston moved in. It's a blended family with 6 children. And they didn't even have the courage to tell them that within a few years, this house was going to be bulldozed down.
But
they thought they could stay there. That's what you're dealing with.
There is no communication. There's no disclosure. There's no honesty so far. There's no one addressing. This is a residential place. It is not a place that's going to be a huge apartment complex. This is full of homes. People have established a lifestyle. They have lived there for years.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Before you leave, any questions from council? Councillor Bagu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, you mentioned you did send a letter into the city.
I did. Did you not?
We did, sir.
Was it? I guess I'm
Planning
asking.
staff?
Was it distributed?
Did you receive their letter?
We could leave a copy with you, and then if you give everybody
right here.
one.
Over there.
We'll put that into, it'll be included in the report, Mr. Planner, correct?
The scary thing is we've never, ever been contacted directly. And I think because of where we are in relationship to this development, I think they owed it to us to be contacted. We had to always reach out. And then we got kind of the runaround.
Okay.
So honestly, something's gonna have to be done.
Further questions? Councilor Borger.
Through your worship to the presenter, have you had a chance to look at the site plan?
Yes.
I'm sorry?
Yes.
To look at this, okay. Because just a couple times you mentioned that's going to be right up to your house. But it's showing a 16.3 meter setback, the building itself, to the southern property line.
Okay, we're talking about an 8-story building.
I'm just
Okay.
want to confirm.
That's pretty close even for an 8-story building, don't you think? Would you want that looking down in your backyard?
Okay, thank you. Further comments? Seeing none, any further questions, council, clarifications? To staff, yes, to staff, or to Mr. Rivers. Go ahead, councilor.
Through your worship to staff, looking at the planning report, it appears only 2 comments were provided by external agencies. We received comments from the Mississauga Credit First Nation and Enbridge. Have you received any MTO comments today, and or the Niagara Region's comments?
Through the chair to the councillor, we have not received MTO's comments yet. We're still waiting on them. The region did say that their comments would be ready by this Friday, but just not here in time for this report. So they will be included in the recommendation report. They're just not available now.
Okay, through your worship, just at time of pre-consultation, the MTO would have provided some preliminary remarks. Did they say anything about lights or any? Do they have any issues regarding that intersection?
Staff?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. The Ministry of Transport, I don't have the comments in front of me right here, but the Ministry of Transportation typically requires that a traffic impact study be completed to their satisfaction. And Paradigm has prepared a traffic impact study in support of the application that's been submitted with this proposal.
Councilor?
Thank you.
Okay, so through your worship, so they submitted it and it's with the MTO for review, but the MTO hasn't provided their comments on that transportation study. Is that correct?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Okay. And then, like you said, we're still waiting on Niagara Region comments. So okay. So there's 2 key agencies that we're waiting on comments from, who could potentially, based on their comments, have an impact on this application. The 2 applications before us. The other thing is the shadow study. There's reference made to it in both the planning report and this presentation, but I didn't see it in our materials, either on our agenda package or in the application section of our website. So was the study submitted, and is staff satisfied with that study?
Through the chair to the councillor, that was one of the studies that we had reached out before the meeting to request, along with those noise studies. We just haven't received a copy of those from the applicant, so.
Sorry, so you haven't received a shadow study?
Correct.
Okay, because it's kind of key when you're asking for 10 meters extra in height, and there's a low density residential use right to the south. So, okay. Next is sanitary capacity. It was brought up by one of the speakers. There was an FSR that was submitted, and there was discussion on that. Was there any comments internally? I'm not sure what our process is. Are we requesting that a peer review of sanitary capacity of FSRs? I know some cities have done that. I'm just not sure if we are right now.
Through the chair to the councillor, I did actually reach out to our engineering staff before the meeting and just kind of followed up. They basically said at this point they have no concerns, but they don't really do their detailed review until the site plan control stage. So yeah, that is to come.
So I understand there's a sort of woodlot that's there. Do we know if it's identified as like a regionally significant woodland? I know with the new Niagara official plan, there's been a lot of changes in terms of woodlots in urban areas. So I'm just wondering, has the region said anything about that woodlot?
Oh, just let staff answer that, please. Thank you.
Through the chair to the councillor, that would be part of the region's comments, that we're just waiting on that fulsome package, so.
Okay. If you could remind me, when was the pre-consultation? When did that take place?
Through the chair to the councillor, I believe it was in summer of 2023, if I remember correctly. July 2023? Yeah, July of 2023.
Oh, okay, was there any?
Counselor?
And then my last question is just, there was a little bit of discussion about some discrepancy regarding the boundary and the removal of a fence that had to take place. I'm just wondering, and I don't think you could answer this would be more of a question to the applicant, just whether or not they've completed the land titles absolute process.
Mr. Rivers?
I don't know.
Okay, you all set?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, Councilor Bruno?
Thank you, Worship. I'm concerned about the oddity of a lot of the region, as Councilor Beauregard said, MTO, our own shadow study not being here tonight. And if you read out what I'm presuming you're going to read out at the end, that people can sign and they will get notification of the final meeting with your planning report. I don't think in this case that's good enough, because folks should not get key reports on the Thursday with a final report. So I'm not so sure if we could get everybody here to sign up and have that regional report, the shadow study, the MTO sent to them in lieu of it not being here tonight, so they have an opportunity to read that over, come back with comments that would be noted to you guys as if they were here and included in that final report. So I'm just asking that we could have that.
Staff?
We agree that is a great idea, and we are happy to do that. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor? Councilor Aquilina?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Bogart triggered me with the MTO question, and I know I had asked Mr. Rivers about this. So I have a little bit of a connection with the former director of the planning department, and he was looking at this application with me, and he had indicated if it's the same owners that owns that other property by Franklin there that hasn't been developed, he indicated that there was a requirement for a light from the MTO whenever that initial application had happened. So in a situation like this, if it was recommended previously, would that be an impact with the MTO now, like going forward? Do you know?
We'll go to the planner.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. If that was the MTO requirement previously, then that would have to be considered. They would still have record of that requirement. In their review of this traffic impact study, they would comment in that regard.
Councilor Bruno?
Thank you.
To that point, and Diane and I have been working on through your request this whole issue of who pays for the light and all of that, and in the DCs it might be paying for it. I find it interesting that in the Coronation Drive one, which if you're gonna have a light at Franklin and West Side Road, it's also gonna be Coronation. And that postdates the earlier application on West Side Road. So I think there needs to be some serious discussion with the MTO as to why they're recommending it at the previous smaller unit, not at Coronation Drive, and now potentially here. So perhaps if we could put some extra zing on that question as to you know, why all three developments wouldn't be contributing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Further questions? Seeing none. Staff? To read out your...
Mr. Mayor, I apologize for the debate. Mr. Rivers had requested an opportunity to respond if there were any questions that came out of council direction or from the public.
Stephen, do you have anything to ask?
I hate to miss a chance. First off,
Button, the microphone? Yeah.
I stand corrected. I obviously didn't respond in full requirements for Mr. Gaverluck. I had mistakenly assumed my planning justification report was adequate for him, but apparently not. Some of his other questions I think are totally irrelevant and, to be quite blunt, none of his business. Whether the applicant has examples of what he's done before, or whether he's experienced, or whatever what the name is not something that should be considered at the time considering the use of land. I certainly also want to express to the Slipex, I have a great deal of empathy for their concern. I too have two grandsons who are neurodivergent, and I understand the issues that you're going through. A number of their concerns relating to dust and blasting and things like that, and to the other lady's concern about parking underground. As most of us know, that is extremely hard rock in that part of Port Colborne. To put underground parking there would be extremely expensive. Obviously not going to do much for the affordability of the units, and as a result there would be certainly no blasting that would take place. The proposal is for the structure to be slab on grade. Again, there was a long list of things that both of the three people talked about, and certainly I'm looking forward to getting the details of those from the minutes of this meeting. And again, we will look at what we can do to resolve some of those, specifically with regard to the Slipex and them saying that they did not receive the letter that I sent out. I can provide you with a copy of the mapping showing the area within 120 meters and list all of the addresses that I sent the letter out to. And as I say, none of them were returned by the post office. So I sent it. I apologize if it was something that they didn't understand what it was or where it was coming from or the purpose of it, but certainly we can talk about what we can do to resolve their concerns.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Rivers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Now you can go ahead.
The proposed official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment recommendation report will return to a future council meeting. To any interested members of the public, if you would like to receive future notices regarding these applications, please contact me by email at diana.vasu@portcolborne.ca or by phone at 905-228-8800. 8120, or the city clerk, Charlotte Madden. Additionally, I would remind you that a sign-in sheet has been provided. It's actually in the committee room just behind our council chambers here. And as was requested, for those who sign up, I will also pass along those studies once they have been submitted to us. That concludes this portion of the public meeting. I will now turn the meeting back to you, Mr. Mayor, to close the public portion of the meeting and receive the report for information.
Thank you. So I do have duly moved and seconded that the Development and Legislative Services Department Report 2024-201 be received for information. Further comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Oh, sorry, Councillor Bodnar.
Thank you. Can I just ask a question about the sign-up sheet? Because we have 3 meetings here tonight. Are they 3 separate sign-up sheets back there, or just one that encompasses all of them?
Through the mayor to the councillor, I will double check if they're not already labeled clearly. I will make sure that they are labeled as soon as I get up.
Okay, because we did have that situation where people put their name on the wrong sheet and didn't get the information they were thinking of. So that'd be great if you could check that out. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor. Further questions or comments? All in favor? That's carried. So thank you, everyone. This portion of the public meeting for 242-246 West Side Road is now officially closed. And as the planning staff said, you can get a hold of Diane at her email address or even the city clerk at portcolborne.ca with any questions. Thank you. Next is item 4.2. This is a public meeting report for proposed zoning bylaw amendment, vacant lot, Elizabeth Street, 2024-203. We'll now open the public meeting for the vacant lot on Elizabeth Street. And if I could have Councillors Bagu and Aquilina put this on the floor. And then we'll go back to planning staff. Is this one yours, David? So Mr. Schultz will be taking over council. Mr. Schultz will be taking this one. Go ahead, David.
Good evening, Mayor Steele and council and members of the public. This public meeting is a requirement of the Planning Act to address an application for an amendment to the zoning bylaw. In accordance with sections 34 of the Planning Act, notice must be given at least 20 days before the public meeting is held. Notice of the public meeting was circulated on October 15th, 2024 to internal departments and agencies. Notice was also circulated via regular mail to property owners within 120 meters. Meeting details have been provided along with the council agenda on the city's website. And a public notice sign was also posted on the subject property. I'll just note that any person wishing to receive notice of the approval or refusal of the zoning bylaw amendment being considered at this meeting must leave their name and mailing address with the city clerk. You may leave your contact information on the sheet located at the back of the chambers. I will note we'll allow the individuals there to sign the sheet for the last application, and then once we have a chance, we can put out a new sign-in sheet for this application. If a person or public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of the City of Port Colborne to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Port Colborne before the zoning bylaw amendment is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. And finally, if a person or public body does not make an oral submission at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Port Colborne before a zoning bylaw amendment is passed, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal, unless in the opinion of the tribunal there are reasonable grounds to do so. The purpose of this meeting is to consider a zoning bylaw amendment initiated by the City of Port Colborne for the lands legally known as Concession 1, part of lots 23 and 24, being Part 1 on 59R 10294 in the City of Port Colborne, Regional Municipality of Niagara, and municipally known as a vacant city-owned land on Elizabeth Street north of the Friendship Trail. The application for zoning bylaw amendment proposes to change the zoning on a portion of the lands from residential development to environmental protection to recognize the flood hazard. The procedure to be followed this evening will be for a staff presentation of the development of the report for Government Relations Department 2024-203. Council will then have the opportunity to request clarification and ask questions of staff, and the public will then be provided with an opportunity to provide comments. At this time, I'd like to present Development and Government Relations Department Report 2024-203. Next slide, please. Thank you. The subject lands are located on the east side of the southern limit of Elizabeth Street. The lands are directly north of the Friendship Trail, and the lands stretch to the east, abutting the unopened Snyder Road road allowance. The lands measure approximately 61 by 810 meters and are approximately 5 hectares in area. Next slide, please. The subject lands are currently zoned residential development. The purpose of this application, again, is to rezone a portion of the lands, as shown it was on the previous slide, to recognize the flood hazard on the property. And this zoning will restrict the lands from being developed in an inappropriate manner in a flood hazard. So it's to protect future uses in that area from flood and rainfall effects. At this time, Your Worship, if there are any questions of clarification, I'd be happy to answer.
Great, thank you. Council, any questions with regards to this report? Councillor Hoyle.
To the mayor, just to clarify, it's just the green shade area or along that whole corridor?
The intention is just that area in the highlight.
And was there any consideration, since there's a drain that goes all the way down?
Yeah, so that will, because of that drain, is the impacts of the flood hazard. So there will be impacts to that. I know we're still waiting on comments from the Niagara region as well. So we can look at if there's any other areas that may be impacted. But at this time, it was just this area that's highlighted.
Okay, thank you.
All right, further questions? Councillor Bodner.
Mr. Mayor, through you to David. There won't be anything done with this fencing or anything. It's just simply going to be left as is, just zoning change.
So this is actually it's a flood storage area. So it will be for overflow and excess flood storage. So it'll just be a land that holds water essentially in heavy rainfall events.
Okay. Questions? Seeing none. Anybody from the crowd have any questions on this report? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Schultz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't believe I have anything else. So the proposed zoning bylaw amendment recommendation report will return to council at a future meeting. To any interested members of the public, again, if you'd like to receive future notices regarding this application, please contact me by email at david.schultz, schulz@portcolborne.ca, or by phone at 905-228-8117, or you can also contact the city clerk. And finally, I would just remind you again that there is a sign-in sheet at the back of the room. Once that room clears out, I can go grab a sheet and bring it out as well. And that concludes this portion of the public meeting, and I'll turn the meeting back to you, Mayor Steele, to close the meeting and receive the report for information.
Great, thank you, Mr. Schultz. So we have Councillors Bagu and Aquilina moving that Development and Government Relations Department Planning Division Report 2024-203 be received for information. Questions or comments? All in favor? That's carried. So that ends this portion of the public meeting for the vacant lot on Elizabeth Street. This meeting is closed. Next item is 4.3. Wait till Mr. Schultz gets this one set up. All right, so we're all set with staff. So this is a public meeting report for proposed zoning bylaw amendment for 3077 Highway 3, file D14-07-24 and 2024-202. So I've got Councilors Bodnar and Hoyle to move this to get on the floor. Over to planning staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This public meeting is a requirement of the Planning Act to address an application for an amendment to the zoning bylaw. In accordance with Section 34 of the Planning Act, notice must be given at least 20 days before the public meeting is held. Notice of the public meeting was circulated on October 15th, 2024 to internal departments and agencies. Notice was also circulated via regular mail to property owners within 120 meters. Meeting details have been provided along with the council agenda on the city's website and on the current application's webpage. The applicant was also required to post the city's public notice sign on the frontage of the property. Any person wishing to receive written notice of the approval or refusal of the zoning bylaw amendment being considered at this meeting must leave their name and mailing address with the city clerk. You may leave your contact information on the sheet located in the committee room just behind council chambers. If a person or public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of the City of Port Colborne to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Port Colborne before the zoning bylaw amendment is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Port Colborne before the zoning bylaw amendment is passed, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. The purpose of this meeting is to consider a zoning bylaw amendment application submitted by the agent, Brian Babcock, on behalf of the owner, Thomas Lawrence, for the lands known as 3077 Highway 3, legally known as Concession 1, part of Lot 12, in the City of Port Colborne within the regional municipality of Niagara. The application for zoning bylaw amendment proposes to change the zoning from hamlet development to hamlet residential to permit the severance for future residential purposes. The procedure to be followed this evening will be staff presentation of Development and Government Relations Department Report 2024-202, followed by the applicant being presented the opportunity to outline their proposal. Council will then have the opportunity to request clarification and ask questions of both parties. The public will then be provided with an opportunity to provide comments. At this time, I would like to present Development and Government Relations Department Report, Public Hearing Report 2024-202. Thank you. You can go to the next slide. Thank you so much. The subject lands are located south of the intersection of Highway 3 and Shirk Road, east of Cedar Bay Road, and north of the Friendship Trail. The lands are municipally known as 3077 Highway 3 and legally known as Concession 1, part of Lot 12, in the City of Port Colborne within the regional municipality of Niagara. The lands measure approximately 157 meters in frontage along Highway 3 and 16.98 hectares in area. Next slide, please. Yeah, no worries, no worries. Oh, you're not seeing it? The subject lands are in the hamlet of Gasline designation in the City of Port Colborne official plan. Land uses in the hamlet designation permit residential uses as well as community facilities, institutional uses, existing agricultural uses, special agricultural and rural uses, neighborhood commercial uses, natural heritage features, parks, and public open spaces. Next slide, please. The Subject lands currently have two different zones established. A portion of the northeast of the property is zoned Hamlet Residential, while the rest of the property is zoned Hamlet Development. Next slide, please. The zoning bylaw amendment application proposes to rezone the portion of the subject lands that are zoned Hamlet Development to Hamlet Residential to permit a future application for consent to sever. As of the date of this meeting, staff have received the following from commenting agencies and departments. The fire department has no concerns at this time, neither do Enbridge nor the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations. The Niagara region has stated that for a proposed change in zoning from Hamlet Development to Hamlet Residential, they would like to see at minimum a stage 1 archaeological assessment prepared by a licensed archaeologist and the ministry's acknowledgement of receiving the assessment. As the property is also impacted by the region's natural environment system consisting of other wetlands, staff would be looking to complete a site visit at minimum in order to confirm whether an environmental impact study or other study is required. There is a portion of the land zone with an environmental layer just to the south of the property, just north of the Friendship Trail. Formalized fulsome comments from the Niagara Region and Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority and internal city staff are forthcoming and will be included in the recommendation report. At this time, are there any questions of clarification from council?
Councilors, questions? Seeing none?
Thank you, Your Worship. At this time, I would like to pass the floor to the applicant to see if they have any comments to provide.
Applicant? Yep, just the red button. Perfect.
My name is Brian Babcock, and this is Tom Lawrence. We just want to separate the farmland from the residential house. So that's all somewhere down the road, he wants to sell the house property. So that's what we're trying to do, is just separate the farm part from the residential part.
See, I just want to keep the land, the house and barn. I want to sell, it's getting too much for me. And I just want to sell that off, but I don't want to sell my land. So this is why I'm asking for the severance of this property. I have no intentions of building.
Okay. Questions to the proponent? Seeing none? Thank you.
Okay. Did you want to ask about the environmental?
Yeah.
We don't know what's involved in that.
She was saying something about the agricultural or what is it? Archaeological. Thank you.
Archaeological.
I've been on this farm all my life, basically. I've worked the farm, plowed the fields. Why is it insisted on this study, especially when there's only about 8 inches to 12 inches of surface soil? The rest is bedrock. So I don't understand why the Niagara region wants the study done.
We'll get our planners up to answer that question only because they have more experience than Diane. That's okay. You're looking after the people in the back, that's fine. So you understand the question with regards to the archaeological ask?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I jumped in at the right time. So Ms. Vasu and I were speaking about that earlier today, and we're going to take a look a little bit at the region's official plan, which tends to go beyond where the city's official plan does in some situations. So we're going to take a greater look into that and see if it's actually required or if it's something that we can provide a recommendation or an alternative measure to address that same issue.
Okay.
Okay. Good.
Go ahead, Councilor Bruno. Oh, just a second, go ahead.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, we will be in contact with you before we bring forward a recommendation report so that you understand our approach. Thank you.
Councilor Bruno?
Thank you, through the planner. Is that the region's call, or can we control that? Or do we control, I should say?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So ultimately, council makes the decision, but you do have to consider the provincial policies, and that's, the region is conveying what their interpretation of what the provincial policy is. When they adopted their 2022 regional official plan, they adopted a Schedule K, which identifies areas of potential archaeological assessment. And if you look at it, it covers much of the region. So we just want to look a little bit more into that, and we'll have conversations with the regional staff on that issue. Thank you.
And just for council's information, I did forward an email from the minister today with regards to when the region of Niagara is literally out of planning. So I'll allow Mr. Long to digest that, because he just got it late this afternoon after I received it. So that just gives us some insight on how the whole new planning world is working, where it is now in our bailiwick, which I've argued for years it should be. So, Councillor Baggett.
I think, Mr. Mayor, through you, just reminds me of the first case we had where 3 noise studies were done within like 30 meters of each other, and just it is expensive. And I remember how our development with Park Cares, they have to get a noise study done because a locomotive that goes by once every couple weeks, and the cost, was something that probably we have to look at also. But we do have to look at the noise, but common sense has to prevail, Mr. Mayor, and I think you're aware of that. I think you'll back us up on it.
I don't think they're asking for that study on this proposal because of what the proponent was talking about. Further questions to the proponent? Seeing none? Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll go to the public then? You're fine with that? Okay. Anyone from the public have any comments? Questions? Yeah, come on up. And just
clarification at this point.
Yeah, that's fine. Just you press the red button, state your name, and just remind you you've got 10 minutes.
Yep. Aaron Petrie, 2921 Tammy Avenue, just south of the proposed area. Just want to clarify, you guys don't want to develop the farmland? You just want to separate the house and the barn?
That's what they've said. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's okay. Yeah, that's what was asked to the proponent.
So it's not being proposed to be new subdivisions like some of these other areas? It's
not at this time.
It's going to remain farmland?
At this time, based on what the proponent said. If it's sold in the future, what comes back, because it's in Hamlet, that'll have to be dealt with.
We'll have to deal with that in the future.
At that day, yeah.
Because my concerns would be the Oil Mill Creek. If that was developed, which it doesn't sound like it's going to be anytime soon, that might affect that. That might affect some of the people that did have the flooding issues that never spoke up at the last meeting about that, because it would displace the groundwater if everybody put in basements.
Mm-hmm.
And out there, we don't have the infrastructure to support another subdivision like that. Our power grid is old. It's older than I am. It wouldn't support it for sure. And everybody would have to be on septic and cisterns or wells. So it would be a massive undertaking. So that was my concerns about that. So do you just want to separate where your residential part is and the farmland?
Yeah, that's correct.
Until future, it's remaining farmland? No, I'm good with that.
Good. Good. Thanks, Aaron. Any further questions from anybody in the crowd? Seeing none. Staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment recommendation report will return to a future council meeting. To any interested members of the public, if you would like to receive future notices regarding this application, please contact me by email at diana.vasu@portcolborne.ca or by phone at 905-228-8120 or the city clerk, Charlotte Madden. Additionally, I would remind you that a sign-in sheet has been provided in the committee room behind council chambers. That concludes this portion of the public meeting. I will now turn the meeting back to you, Mr. Mayor, to close the public portion of the meeting and receive the report for information.
Thank you. So I have had Councillors Bodner Hoyle move that the Development and Government Relations Department report 2024-202 be received for information. Further questions or comments? All in favor? That's carried. So this public meeting for 3077 Highway 3 is now officially closed. And now we are officially adjourned. Thank you.